Hey everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how I built this DIY poster frame that opens so that you can replace the poster anytime you want. On Modern Builds. I'm going to be building my frame out of 3/4 inch thick solid birch, the same boards that I used to make the trim pieces for my DIY plywood floor. And what you see me doing here is using my track saw to cut one perfectly square edge along each of the boards. Then I ran that straight edge along the table saw fence so that I could cut the other side square. If you're getting your boards from somewhere like Home Depot instead of a lumber supplier, there's a good chance that you'll be able to skip this step. Then I moved my table saw over a little over 1/16 of an inch and I started cutting the groove on each side of the board. This groove, called a rabbet, is going to be on the back of the frame and it's what the glass and the matting is going to set in. I only took the thickness of the blade with each repeating pass, but do that enough times and you'll have a good half-inch groove that'll be ready to be chiseled clean. The awesome thing about cutting this groove on each side of the board means that all I have to do is cut it in half and I've got two pieces ready to go. A useful tip is to set your table saw fence a little more narrow than half of the width of the board. Then after you cut it in half, take the bigger piece and cut it to the size of the smaller. That way they're identical. I've had this super basic poster frame for quite a while and I don't really see myself using it. It's not my style, but it does have some glass, or I should say plastic, that we can use on our swing frame as well as a mat apparently. Let's open it up and find out. And in case you don't already have a frame, I'll leave the one I used linked in the description as well as all the individual parts. Well, apparently there's only a mat for a gallery frame. No worries though, because the plastic looked great even though it was a little bit thin. The good thing though is that I had already picked up foam core and matting at Home Depot and was prepared. I don't do frames or miters very often and I'm not super confident with the math, so instead of trying to do that, I just put the plastic in place and marked where I wanted to cut. Then, I got my miter gauge along with my speed square and I set it to 45 degrees. And if you don't already have a table saw but you were able to make the grooves, no worries, you can use a miter saw, even a miter box, and a handsaw. The convenient thing about a table saw compared to the others I mentioned is that it's really easy to sneak up on your line and not cut too far. After I had one of each piece cut, I used those to mark and cut their pair. Now that all four of my pieces were cut, I could grab my Gorilla Wood Glue and start the assembly process. What I'm doing here is essentially a flood coat. Miter joints expose ingrain, which isn't always the best for glue ups. I'm applying a decent amount and working it in with my index finger. This is going to make sure that whenever I do my final glue up, it doesn't all soak up and leave me with a dry joint. For the glue up, I'm using a strap clamp, and these are basically just ratchet straps with these plastic corner pieces that help guide the boards and keep everything square. To reinforce all of the corners, I'm going to be using these. They're called V-nails and they're made for picture frame making, to be used with this jig. I've used them on previous frames and they work great. Plus, you don't have to have the jig. I found that using needle nose pliers to hold the V-nails while you hit them in with a hammer works great. Or at least the majority of the time. Really quickly, I'd like to give a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with over 26,000 courses from design, business, and almost everything in between. Premium memberships give you unlimited access to literally every single course on Skillshare, whether that's a creative course for photography or videography, or if you're interested in stepping up your side hustle to your full-time career. This week I'd like to highlight two courses that I think you might be interested in. The first is called Creating Art That Sells, a working artist's guide, learn with Society 6. The second course is Building an Etsy Shop That Sells, strategies for e-commerce success. Both of these courses are about taking the creative work that you're passionate in and turning it into a passive income. And right now, for my subscribers, Skillshare is hooking it up. They're giving away free 2-month unlimited access premium trials to the first 500 people that follow the link down in the description and sign up. Following that, a Skillshare premium membership costs right around $10 a month. So join the 7 million creators learning on Skillshare. Links down in the description. Thanks, guys. While the main frame is done and the glue is drying, I decided to get some 3/4 inch pine plywood to create the frame's back. The dimensions I used for everything will be in my written article, but feel free to adjust for whatever size frame you want. There's about a 3/4 inch reveal between the frame and the back panel, and this space is where the hinges are gonna go. This iron-on edge banding is also birch, just like the rest of the frame, so it's gonna disguise this pine plywood because it's only ever gonna be seen from the edge. This is a little trick I've been doing lately anytime I'm installing hinges or other small pieces of hardware. I use this Gorilla Super Glue gel to attach the hinge to the pieces of wood. That way I can pre-drill and drill all my screws without the hinge moving around. This means that I can pre-drill all of my holes without having to worry about them getting out of alignment, and then install all of my screws at the same time. These continuous hinges are often referred to as piano hinges, and they stay straight really well, and that's awesome so that my frame doesn't droop. Now don't worry, I know the frame is hitting the table, which means it'll eventually be hitting the wall, but I've already come up with a solution for that, so stay tuned. Now, I'm gonna apply some Maker Brand Co. Simple Finish. Simple Finish is a product line from my company, Maker Brand Co., and if you haven't tried it yet, I couldn't recommend it more. It's really the best oil-based wood finish for woodworking projects I've ever used. Inside, away from all the sawdust, I got my picture matting and my knife, thanks Jesse, and I cut it to size. I don't do a lot of cutting like this, and I'm sure a cutting mat would be beneficial. One tip that I did find out was using spring clamps along with whatever straight edge you're using is really convenient to make sure that it never moves and you get really clean lines. A really common poster size is 2 feet by 3 feet, and that's what I'm cutting the inside of my matting to. Actually, the opening is a little smaller than 2 feet by 3 feet, that way there's a little bit of a reveal. I've seen a few different ways to secure things inside of the frame, sometimes using mechanical fasteners, other times using adhesives. I'm going to be using hot glue. Before I go on, I want to make sure we know the difference between matting and the foam core that I'm going to be installing on the back panel of the frame. I'm using this foam core to fill the space between the frame and the back panel where the art sets. The groove on the back of the frame ended up being a little deeper than I planned. I'll be using this spray adhesive to attach the foam core to the back panel. A little tip with spray adhesive is if you want a stronger bond, it actually helps to let the adhesive set for a minute before you attach it to whatever you want it to adhere to. Of course, you still want it to be tacky whenever you apply your piece, but this is going to provide a more permanent bond. For the posters though, a permanent bond is the exact opposite of what I want. Once I had everything lined up where I wanted it to be, I used a pin to mark the corners of the poster, that way whenever I replaced it, I knew where to line everything up. Then I used what's called artist tape to attach the poster to the foam core backing. This tape is acid-free and doesn't have an incredibly strong adhesive, that way it doesn't stick like masking tape might. This 45-degree cut that I just made is for what's called a French cleat, and it's how I'm hanging the frame. One of the pieces gets glued and screwed to the frame. It's sort of the hook that we're hanging the frame with. Then I attached a spacer to the bottom of the frame so it sets off the wall. The second 45-degree piece is going to get attached to the wall, and these will interlock when everything hangs. These French cleats are going to make the frame set a ½ inch off the wall, just enough room for the door to open all the way. If possible, screw into any 2x4 studs behind the drywall, and anywhere that there's not studs, make sure and use a strong drywall anchor. So right now I'm thinking I'm almost done. I'm able to hang the frame and it's time for pictures, but not yet, because the door doesn't want to stay closed. Conveniently though, I had this magnetic door latch that I'm going to use to hold the door shut. I used the same super glue trick to hold the latch in place while I screwed everything in. This was the first time that I had used one of these magnetic door holds, and I was surprised just how strong the magnet was, so look forward to these in the future. And now that that pesky door will stay closed, I can call the frame done. Swapping out posters in this frame is surprisingly quick. Because I already have marks and can line my poster up fast, it just takes a little bit of time to apply a little bit of tape and latch that door closed. I got a few posters of some of my favorite movies, that way I could stage up the frame. I also picked a couple of the movies that both me and my dad really love as well. So I really hope y'all enjoyed the video and dug the project. I am super happy with how it came out, and I couldn't be more glad that it's going in the home theater that I just finished in my parents' attic. If you're interested in seeing that attic to home theater renovation, there's a card in the corner and a link down below. I've got a couple more projects in this space, so make sure and hit that subscribe button down below along with the notification bell. That way you stay updated every time I post new videos. If you want to keep up with me throughout the week, I am at Modern Builds, and you can reach me with any questions with a DM there or down in the comments below. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate all the support, and we'll see you next time on Modern Builds. Oh, check this out. That's a lot of stickers. The certified banger stickers are on their way to the 100 people that got their information to me in their review.